Today we're going to look more closely at Dickinson's poem number 161, also known by its first line, "What mystery pervades a well." She continues her well-trodden consideration of nature as a means of belonging, but also as a relationship she sets up as a metaphor to belonging as a whole, to others, society, and the broader world. As is typical in Dickinson's work, she employs slant rhyme, a type of rhyme in which either the vowels or the consonants of stressed syllables are identical, as in glass and face. In stanza 2, this loose cohesion throughout the poem mirrors the manner in which she also ponders these concepts, never with a sense of absolutes, but rather with a puzzling and a hypothesizing. She begins with an exclamation, "What mystery pervades a well," which sets an upbeat and curious tone. It also sets a celebratory tone for her process of investigation and exploration of the value of subjectivity in probing central life questions. There is a juxtaposition between the abstract mystery and the concrete, the well, a man-made object. The water lives so far employs synecdoche to represent water as the things we can never really know or comprehend. Water also has connotations that imply physical and spiritual cleansing, as well as nature and life. She then personifies the water as a neighbour from another world, employing a paradox of something both known and foreign. The metaphor is extended to residing in a jar, making the water seem friendly, contained, as humans like to control, and it's something known. In this sentence, Dickinson compares the work of man, the jar, and the majesty and depth and complexity of nature, the mystery. This shows her understanding and connection with nature. These juxtapositions in the opening stanza establish the paradox of belonging and foreshadow her assertion that perhaps true belonging is impossible. Her bond to nature will always be hindered by these differences between humanity and nature. The enjambment between jar and whose continues the contradictory nature of the water. It is contained and simultaneously limitless, a limit none have ever seen. The hyperbole emphasizes the notion that we may feel we know someone, but really they will always remain unknowable because of the personification suggests we really only see his lid of glass. Dickinson's perception of belonging in this instance is a realization that such connections are only superficial, as we can't truly belong to someone or something else without giving up some of our own truths and authenticity. So to belong, ironically, is to compromise and show only our metaphorical lids. She extends these contrasting images of surface and depth by proposing through the simile, that to look is to look into an abyss's face. The metonym of face stands for our sense of identity, intrinsically linked to the perception of belonging. The ambiguous connotations of this comparison also evokes a mixture of fear and awe that belonging can arouse, a contradictory and somewhat bleak view of the experience and typical of Dickinson's unique and individualist perspective on belonging, subverting the assumption that belonging is only ever a desirable and positive pursuit. The third stanza begins with an analogy. Dickinson now shifts to a series of relationships in nature which appear very different to the one she has with nature and, you could argue, with others. She personifies the grass as being unafraid of the well and the water as it literally and metaphorically stands so close. The elements of nature have an easy affinity with each other. Dickinson then extends this comparison in her next stanza to other natural relationships. In stanza 4, the alliteration employed in the line, "the sedge stands next to the sea," uses a sound device to mirror the bond that is forged between these natural elements. Sedge is a sturdy grass-like plant often found in the shorelines and sand dunes near the sea. The plant sits calmly next to something that is potentially intimidating. The pun used in the term flawless evokes the respect and admiration Dickinson has for the sea. It is flawless in terms of the depths it can descend to, but it is also flawless or perfect in her eyes. These lines remind us of the strong sense of belonging that Dickinson has for nature. It also reminds us of one of her earlier poems in which she asserted that nature, with its tender majesty, was her kind of belonging. In her poem, This Is My Letter to the World, her own relationship with the abstract concept and physical world of nature is a complex and multifaceted one. She feels the natural affinity with it, yet she knows it's ultimately the dominant force in their relationship, as, if you remember, she cleverly described in her poem I Died for Beauty, when the moss ultimately covers the lips of her personas. It will conquer us all, even in death. There are a number of important connections emerging to belonging now. This is a poem about the persona's complex bond with nature, a reminder that the relationship is not a balanced one. Nature is the more dominant partner, and also that belonging as a whole is really a paradoxical experience. The fifth stanza begins to bring these threads together. Through the conjunction, but nature is a stranger yet, Dickinson employs a succession of negative terms, creating a negative lexicon, stranger, haunted, ghost, to enhance her argument that nature is elusive and potentially dangerous. It seems to be arrogance that drives others to assert their relationship, the ones that cite her most. The persona instead claims the higher knowledge of her great mystery. She balances out in the final stanza the assertion that those who don't belong to nature at all are left in blissful ignorance, because those who think they truly know will only paradoxically know her less. There seems to be an implied critical reference to male writers in particular who wrote deeply about connecting to nature. Ralph Waldo Emerson or Henry David Thoreau, these thinkers of the transcendentalist movement, who once inspired Dickinson, but now she seems to have forged her own individualist perspective beyond their grasp and ideas. The high modality of her concluding lines, that those who know her less, the nearer her they get, reasserts this paradox of belonging and leaves us wondering, can we ever truly belong if such connections only make us keenly aware of the potential superficiality or mystery? Is it in fact impossible to belong to anything or anyone authentically?